Hi everybody, my name is Shefalika and I'm an RCI licensed clinical psychologist. I've done my MPhil in clinical psychology and I've been in the field of mental health for the past 4 years. So, depression and anxiety are two independent mental health conditions. Each of them have their own signs and symptoms and the psychosocial impact it has on an individual. So, depression and anxiety can be classified as diseases or mental health conditions that require treatment. Now, all of us may have heard each one of us say maybe from time to time that I'm depressed or I'm feeling sad or I'm just anxious, and it is very frequently used and normalized in an everyday language. However, individuals who are experiencing chronic depression or have been diagnosed or rather are experiencing chronic anxiety may actually require treatment both in the form of medication, which is pharmacological treatment, or psychological interventions to make sure that their coping is taken care of. So in that sense, both depression and anxiety can be classified as disease that require treatment. I think what's important to also understand is that a lot of times we understand disease as something affecting a part of the body. However, both anxiety and depressions can be classified as systemic diseases which affect the entire body and not just a specific part. So in that sense, depression and anxiety would not only affect your body as a physical being but also your mind, both of which require treatment. So the signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety, you would have universal symptoms of anxiety and depression. However, the manifestation of these symptoms could differ from person to person. So for instance, if there is an individual who's diagnosed with depression or is suffering from depression, he or she may experience certain kind of symptoms such as persistent or pervasive sadness of mood. There could be a loss of appetite, or there could be weight gain, or you could see crying spells too. However, if there are two people who are diagnosed with depression, the manifestation of these symptoms in itself could be different, right? You could see that one person is visibly sad, right? One person is visibly upset. You can see him or her crying over. Whereas another person might be withdrawn. They might not be visibly upset, but you could see that there is lack of attention and concentration, or you could see that they're socially withdrawn. They're not interacting enough. Similarly, for anxiety, there would be certain signs and symptoms that you see in cases of anxiety disorders, but how they play out in an individual would be different from people to people. So in that sense, every person would have its own unique experiences and manifestation of these symptoms, and it is important to understand from a treatment perspective that how these symptoms are impacting the person concerned. I think there has been an increase in, how many people are getting diagnosed with anxiety or depression. And I think the primary reasons for that would be one, there has been an increase in, the level of awareness. If we speak about, let's say, maybe 10 years ago, and if we see ourselves now, there definitely has been an increase of awareness. That has led to people being more aware about what's going on, right? And that is one reason I feel that people have become more vocal about what they're experiencing. Then there have been, I think, a lot of personal and societal factors that have contributed to this as well. So if we talk about at a personal front, we do see a lot of children, especially children who are, let's say, school going, or they're, from school they're stemming to colleges. I feel there are a lot of children who by default are anxious, and because of the experiences they've had in the past, whether at school or their current experiences, they are predisposed to being more anxious as compared to their peers. A lot also has to do with the expectations they have set for themselves, the expectations that are being communicated by their families, whether implicit or explicit in nature, and the kind of expectations their peers set for themselves, right? So if we talk about a student who's expected to do well, that expectation could be their own, that I need to do well as an individual, and if I don't meet up to these standards, there is a lack of self-esteem that you get to notice. There's a change in confidence that you feel, and that also contributes to a lot of anxiety. Similarly, the expectations that are being communicated by your families, by your relatives, that you ought to do well, or you are expected to do well, or live up to a certain kind of image that they've set for themselves. Similarly, I think social media is contributing to these challenges immensely. Like you see, as a kid, you see, what your peers are, going through, or what they're doing. So I think the smallest example that I could share is that recently I had an interaction with a kid who told me that one of their classmates were actually going for a trip abroad, and that made this kid sad that he's not able to do the same thing. So that comparison is also becoming more and more apparent, which is contributing to an extent, at least, to feelings of sadness and anxiety, which I think over time, based coupled with a lot of other things, I think does add to their tendency to feel sadder on a, let's say, on a longitudinal basis, which can eventually lead to one getting diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I think one important thing to know, to understand is that there's probably not just one single reason that one can pinpoint why someone is depressed or why someone is anxious in nature. There would be multiple causes that are, eventually adding up to the experiences an individual has, and I think that together are something that may make an individual more predisposed to experiencing anxiety or depression. So for me, that would be the reasons why someone is, why the youth probably today is getting more frequently diagnosed. I think understanding that when one requires treatment is very, very crucial, right? Because it's always said that early intervention can help you feel much better, right? So if I were to talk about depression and anxiety specifically, I think from time to time, all of us would have had situations in our lives when we felt low, when we felt sad, or we cried over certain things, or we felt anxious, let's say, about an upcoming presentation or an upcoming exam. Now, these are normal experiences which all of us may have encountered at least at some point of time in our lives. However, when these experiences become more regular in nature, they're more frequent, they're getting more and more intense, and they are persistent and pervasive in the sense that they are beginning to interfere in your everyday functioning. You see a spillover effect that is not temporary in nature, it is more longitudinal or long term in nature. That is wherein one needs to understand that this is the time when help is required. And that help could initially be taken, maybe, let's say, from your family or friends. But if that still doesn't suffice, if that help is not enough, then that's the time where a mental health professional help could be taken. It could be in terms of pharmacological help, wherein you are on medical treatment, or it could be in terms of non-pharmacological help, which could be psychological intervention, or as commonly as we call counseling. Both these interventions are important from their own standpoint. However, it's been seen that a combination of the two works the best, depending upon the situation you are at and the kind of experiences or the challenges you are experiencing. The treatment could be decided accordingly.